For me, it's like Industrial Revolution, birth of the internet, AI. It's going to totally impact every area, and you find areas where it was good for society and areas where it was maybe detrimental to society, and AI is no different.
I think the concept of leadership saying, hey, we're going to wait for a while to think about this, it's moving much too fast for that. It's here to stay. Obviously, you need to understand your own strategic goals of your business, but then start looking for those small wins that you can leverage with AI in the context of with your employees. And I think that's the first starting point is getting it exposed, leading by example, using it.
In a general sense, employees want to do a good job. They want to be productive, they want to be excelling at their work, and so we know these tools exist. And so you need to get ahead of it and be clear and communicating on what is available and what can be used. I think there's a huge missed opportunity if you're just so heavily focused on the efficiencies and the technology piece and not the human element. The people are what really shape our culture.
Have some semblance of knowledge about what you're asking of it in the beginning. So this is why education is so important, and how AI is not something you use so that you can turn your brain off.
Thank you. Welcome. Today's conversation tackles one of the most urgent and exciting technologies and forces reshaping not only our industry, but I think everybody's life, and that's artificial intelligence. You can tell how important it is because we got a table and flowers up here for our So we brought together leaders from IT, HR, and marketing because AI is no longer just a tech issue. It's changing how we work, lead, hire, create, and compete. So from strategy and systems to culture and creativity, we'll explore how to move past the hype and harness AI with purpose, responsibility, and vision. So let's get started if you're ready.
Perfect.
All right. So first question, what has your team done with AI so far, and any successes or lessons learned?
Yeah. So NEI technology, we've been going through this small change called an ERP migration. Everybody's probably heard about that. But we've been using AI to help basically do code migration, do a fair amount of software discovery in terms of how the new platform that we've been embracing is actually leveraged, as well as help desk. So we've used it quite a bit with our Microsoft help desk and trying to basically speed answers to not only our user community internally, but also those across your teams that we interact with and have to do integrations with. And it's been very helpful.
Yes.
Great. From an HR perspective, we've leveraged it quite a bit in document creation for things like job descriptions, allowing the team to spend more time fine-tuning versus that creation of it that is a little more tedious. We've also leveraged it within our salary benchmarking tool to create job descriptions, which allows us to better benchmark our roles in the market. We've leveraged AI assistant tools and things like Zoom for meeting notes, as well as phone screens, allowing us to have some efficiency gains in our recruitment process. We all know we want to get people hired and onboarded quickly. And I know a lot of companies have invested in AI in terms of using it to screen candidates from an application standpoint and raising them to different levels or ruling them out for the job postings. That's not something we've currently invested in. That can be very beneficial when you are screening hundreds of applications or resumes for one single job. That our volume has not justified that at this point, but it is something we're staying close to. I would just say from like a general recommendation though, regardless of what type of screening tool that you're putting in, whether it's AI or something else to screen your candidates, it's really important from an HR perspective and a compliance standpoint that it's correlated to something that's job related, and then that's regularly reviewed to make sure it's producing what you're expecting and not having any other negative implications. We've leveraged AI as we evaluated our employee engagement survey results in developing action plans to better or improve our overall, enhance our overall retention and employee engagement. On the flip side, I mentioned some things that we've done, but candidates are using AI too. So they're using AI to build their resumes. So it's really important to have a defined recruitment process so that you can validate the things that the candidate is putting on the resume. So building those interview guides so that you can validate the experiences and qualifications that they have listed.
Nice. Zach, would you like to?
I almost made it like, what aren't we doing with AI? No, like this question was interesting because, we got excited about AI because we were a small team and trying to figure out sort of like, how do we punch above our weight? Like we like being a small team. There's a lot of collaboration there. But, with that comes some challenges. And I think, looking at some of our, just normal processes, things that we do every day and want to do better, we sort of started to identify certain places in what we were doing that it'd be a really good opportunity to just like embed a prompt-based task and then judge the output. And so, we've done that. Like efficiency, I don't know how much you guys watch Relocation Leader, our podcast, but that's not an easy thing to put together. And Ben, our producer, will tell you, when we started out, there was a lot of time devoted to making sure that we knew what we were doing and we had something to put out there. We've gotten it down from maybe a 16-hour edit to, depending on if I do well, maybe like a 3 or 4 hour, job from recording to finished product. And so a lot of that wouldn't have been possible without using some of the AI tools. So there's that stuff. But I would say one of the highest value things that we've done is we realize how AI is influencing people's buying decisions and behavior. And people are now using AI search to basically come up with their perception of how they view different companies. And we're like, well, we think we've done a lot of really great things at NEI, and we work with a lot of great partners. We have a lot to offer. And sometimes in organic search, the way it was done in the past, that stuff would take a while to show up and circulate. But with the advent of AI and AI search, we found that you can put something out there about your company and it picks it up right away, And so we're like, oh, well, what do we want people to find us for? And we started typing in those queries and seeing sort of how AI is constructing those answers and what sources they're using. And we're like, we think we can impact this. And so we got really strategic and creative with what we're putting out there onto the internet. And lo and behold, we started showing up in all the right queries and questions and lists. And we've actually seen a really big impact on our sales and some of the leads we're getting saying, hey, we found you on ChatGPT, we found you on Copilot. And the AI engines think a lot of NEI. And we're happy, not just because we're getting the business, but because we think that the internet is finally telling NEI's story in a way that we would all agree that it should be told. So that is what we're most excited about. And if you pull me down in the hallway, I can tell you a bunch of other things that we are doing right now too.
Awesome, very exciting. And I award 5 points to Dar.
Thank you.
So, and Zach, building on what you just mentioned, how is AI changing the creative process itself from refinement to invention?
Yeah, so I think that AI is an incredible, for me, it's like industrial revolution, birth of the internet, AI. It's going to totally impact every area. And we see in each part of those, punctuated bouts of enterprise growth or whatever, you find areas where it was good for society and areas where it was maybe detrimental to society. And AI is no different, except for I think it's all affecting us more personally now. And there's great opportunity for AI to sort of enhance and protect creative ability, but there's also a great opportunity for it to hinder creative ability. And one of the things I was thinking about is like, how do I express this concept? And I thought of, so if you guys watch the podcast for any length of time, you'll find out that I like the movie Ford versus Ferrari, right? And it makes me think, this whole conversation that we're having really makes me think of that movie, because the half of the movie is Matt Damon trying to get Henry Ford Jr. to understand, like, hey, the driver in the seat matters. You have to get Ken Miles in that seat or else we're not going to win, right? And then there's like movies like Minority Report, where it's like, it blew my mind when it showed everyone just zipping around on these tracks of cars that just drove them everywhere, and they're all doing something more important. They don't want to drive, right? So with AI, there are instances where it's like you want a driver in the seat. And then there's instances where it's like you could be doing something better, and you have to figure out what that is for your company, So sometimes you definitely want a driver in the seat, and that's going to make you a better, more engaging company to work with. You're doing better service, providing more value to your clients. And then other areas, you're really looking at efficiency. And it's like, somebody needs to handle this because I don't want to do it. I want to save my work for something more creative or value focused. But then on the flip side, like with education, it's like people are using AI to do their homework and to, and it's like, that is bad, guys. Like this, you're going to lose your entire ability to judge whether AI is giving you crud or not crud, like whether AI is actually helping people or if it's going to hinder them too. So it's like a cascading effect. And so I think that, there's all those sort of things to think about. And then there's like this, can you actually use AI to be creative itself? Like, instead of using it to just pawn off, a task or whatever, it's like, how can you actually be creative with AI? And the answer to that is you can't be creative with AI unless you have a great idea of what you want before you ever start working with it. And if you have that, then you're able to actually iterate and work with AI and say, nope, not what I wanted. You need to adjust it in this way. Nope, that's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z. And then at the end, you can look at your product and you say, that's what I want. And you just became creative with AI, But again, if you're using just to, like, you're abdicating a lot of your work and just trusting that it's going to get it right, that's going to rob you in the future, and it's going to rob all the people you serve.
Very excellent points there. Dar, you kind of briefly mentioned some strategic goals that we're working towards. How should senior leaders position their companies today to avoid being left behind in tomorrow's ecosystem?
Yeah, so everything, we've just been talking about, and Zach mentioned it, in terms of the pace by which AI is being adopted internal to applications, to systems, to platforms. And so I think the concept of leadership saying, hey, we're going to wait for a while to think about this, it's moving much too fast for that. You're going to be left in the dust. And so strategically, I think, obviously you need to understand your own strategic goals of your business, but then start looking for those small wins that you can leverage with AI in the context of, but with your employees. And I think that's the first starting point is getting it exposed, leading by example, using it, and starting to embrace it within your operations in a safe manner. And I know there might be a follow-on question about security, so I'll pause on that. But I think that's where we need to, as leaders, tend to go is lead by example. It can be a scary tool. We've got our teammates that we've been starting to embrace for doing regulatory research as well as design and construction. So, but I think strategically, that's where companies have to start leaning is it's here to stay, and we better figure out how to use it or we're going to get left behind.
Right. Zach, I'll skip over to you.
I'm going to totally ask what the question was again.
How do companies today avoid being left behind in tomorrow's ecosystem?
Oh, yeah. So, and I think that you have to start with the ideal customer experience, you have to be able to look at your own service offerings or your own product, and you have to say, what is the best? Like AI aside, don't even think about AI. Like what do people actually need? Not just what they say they need. What do they need, and what are they going to really just jump at, right? I'm a big fan of Alex Hormozi, and he's like, you make people offers that they would feel dumb saying no to, right? It's like, what is that? You start there, and then after you've got a clear vision of what it is you want, you then go find somebody like Dar, like JR, and you say, hey, can AI help me do this? Like what parts can AI help make this a reality, right? And sometimes it may be iterative. Maybe you hit the nail on the head the first try. But the point is that you never start with AI, because you'll end up with, there's a lot of examples of people that started with AI, and they're not all great, So like you have to have a clear vision of what you want to offer in the ideal, and then you start there and just use AI as an efficiency tool, or like as an execution tool. You make sure that you can get there quicker.
Do you, Ryan?
They did a great job. But I would just add, it really needs to be part of where are you trying to go from a strategic standpoint, really planning out what's that 5-year, that 10-year roadmap, and how not having it stand alone as a technology initiative, that it's how is it supporting your businesses to move them forward. I would say the same thing for people. How are your people supporting? And so, what are you doing to communicate that strategy so that you're gaining that buy-in and support? Because the people are also going to be executing what you are trying to accomplish, whether it be something related to AI or another business initiative.
Okay. Now, Zach, you kind of touched on students using AI to do their homework for them, write their papers and whatnot. So as companies speed run towards taking advantage of AI, how do you prevent running in the wrong direction? And what does it look like when companies misuse AI?
Yeah, I think hands down, it's chasing efficiency for efficiency's sake, and never stopping long enough to ask yourself if efficiency is the goal. I think about all of the, if you think about brands that produce products that are just next level, like the Rolls Royces of the world, right? Rolex, and none of these people, when they're putting those things together, have efficiency in mind. It's all quality, right? And sometimes you do want to offer efficiency, and then that becomes the goal. But if you just skip straight to efficiency, you're going to create some products that people are going to want, or offer services that people are not going to need. And so I think that's where you have to start.
Same question.
I think I mentioned just the communication. I think it's really important that you're proactively communicating and setting clear expectations with your employees on what is acceptable, what are our guidelines, what tools can be used when they shouldn't be used. In a general sense, employees want to do a good job. They want to be productive. They want to be excelling at their work. And so we know these tools exist. And so you need to get ahead of it and be clear and communicating on what is available and what can be used. And the second piece I would say is just, I think there's a huge missed opportunity if you, as I think we've mentioned, if you're just so heavily focused on the efficiencies and the technology piece and not the human element. The people are what really shape our culture, and those human connections that we have to each other, to our clients, to our transferees, to all of our partners here in the room today. That's what makes us unique and what makes us special. So it's about leveraging AI so that we can amplify those experiences, whether those are employee experiences or customer experiences. So we need to make sure that we keep that people, that human element at the forefront.
How about you, Dar?
If I can just expand on that, I think one area that companies today are losing sight is they're taking that human element out, and whether they're having interactions with clients or potential clients or customers in a customer service setting, their responses are getting very plastic. You can tell when you're on the phone with an IVR and you're talking to a bot as opposed to an actual individual. And I think that's where, at least from our vantage point, that we want to make sure we still maintain that NEI human aspect to all of our interactions. We're still going to leverage AI to the utmost to make us as efficient as possible, but it's a human industry and we need to maintain that.
Absolutely.
Nice. I do want to circle back on that human element piece. But first, as you mentioned, security. What does security look like here in the age of AI?
Yeah, well, so this one, I was thinking about just, our traditional concept is that there's this big database someplace where all of our interactions with AI are going into, and that's easily queryable. And the harsh reality is that's not really the way AI works. It is very resonant. It's very memory resonant, I should say. And that's where that speed comes from that Zach was talking about. And so the challenge with it is that once something's out there, even if the originator, or even if the OpenAI or XAI want to go out and scrub that, it's very, very complex for them to try to do that. And so we need to make sure we're educating our employees in terms of what data is acceptable to go out, or what, in the case of code, and that's something that JR and I've had a lot of conversations about, making sure that security keys or anything that's truly proprietary to NEI, we don't want out there. Because as an example, just recently in July, I think there was an event that happened with OpenAI where a browser setting and users were using OpenAI to maybe audit or summarize case notes, client notes, whatnot, and they had that checked to where it was public and would create a public URL. And those URLs got out to Google, got out to Bing, and suddenly you had this very, searchable event where all this dialogue that you've been having with this AI engine is now exposed. Up to this point, I think it's about 5,000 events that they've been able to identify where that's occurred. But that's the risk that we have with AI, is that once it's out there, you don't know where it's going to go or how it's going to be leveraged.
Interesting. So each of you briefly touched on that human element. Human connection is still being important here. So as this technology keeps advancing, are people becoming less important or more important? And I'll start with you, Wayne.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the question that all of our employees have, is what does this mean for me? What does it mean for my job? What does it mean for the future? And I strongly believe, no, it does not make them less important for the things that we've kind of shared already, because they are truly what make our organization special and what make up our culture. But does it mean their roles are going to change? The skills that we need? Absolutely. But if you think about historically, as we've introduced things like the computer, internet, email, those all drastically changed how we did our work. So it is going to be important that we evolve and that our employees evolve along with the change. But I think putting our people first and really focusing on how do we hone in on those skills like creativity, critical thinking, empathy, self-reflection. Those are all skills that we as humans possess, and we can, I truly believe, outperform AI. And so if we're leveraging AI where it has its strengths and our people where they have their strengths, I think that's the win-win scenario in terms of moving forward in the future.
You want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I guess two thoughts. One, I truly believe AI and the way, just thinking about the training opportunities with AI, to be able to onboard a new employee and offer them training dynamically, whether it's written, which is great. Some people get their best comprehension that way. Others may be listening to some sort of training, or maybe watching visuals and a video. But to be able to dynamically develop that personalized training for those individuals is going to make it incredibly powerful to onboard employees and get them moving within the organization's culture much faster. The second thought that I've got on this is that I think, at least the way we're thinking about it with our, say, junior developers, we would love to get to the point where these tools are augmenting their existing capabilities, but maybe instead of them actually coding one application, maybe they're managing a handful of bots that are coding orchestrated applications. And that really just elevates them as far as, kind of coming in and, okay, yeah, I'm going to do, a couple million lines of code in the next 6 months. No, you're going to be working with engines that are going to actually develop whole systems or whole applications in a much faster manner. That's where I think we can, leverage our employees in a much more meaningful fashion, not only for the business, but also for their careers as a whole.
Absolutely. Zach, you want to add anything?
I love Dar's answer. So he kind of handles all the technical stuff, and that's what I love about him. I go bigger picture. Right now, AI it doesn't want things. It's a machine still. And I think humans, what we bring to the table is we do want things. We dream, we have an imagination, and we are incredibly creative, even more so than AI right now. And so I think that in the realm of sort of creative ideation, humans are becoming eminently important. But for like process execution, AI is they're flexing. It's all the AI engines are flexing right now. They can really help things come to life, and that's sort of how I think we have to look at it. It's like, hey, we finally get a magic wand, and we have to make sure we're wishing for good things. So,
very nice. Ryan, on the HR side, how will employee development change in an AI-driven workplace, and how has it changed people management? And how will it continue to change?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few things to unbundle here. I think Dar mentioned some of it in the training, but if you go back to the fact that we're evolving, the skills that we need, the roles that we need will continue to change. Both employers and employees are going to really need to be open and have that growth mindset for that development, because the things that maybe they were doing today are going to look different. The skills that they need to do, if there is more automation and more time needs to be spent in that, thinking creatively, thinking those critical thinking skills, being more strategic. There's a lot of opportunity there, but that is different than what some employees are doing today or even have time to do. So as employers, we really need to have a high focus on that employee development and understanding where our employees are at and how can we help support them along that journey. I think about the importance a lot of the mid-level leader, and I think we talk about it in HR all the time of how important that role is into the employee's experience, to their development, and there isn't a more critical time for that role than when you're talking about transformational change, which I think we're talking about today. And so that role is going to be extremely important in that employee development, to support them, recognize where they might have opportunity to upskill, help partner to create those individualized plans for them. It's also going to shift from an HR perspective in terms of our recruitment. What are we searching for? What are those core competencies that we're looking for in individuals? Because the roles in which they're going to be playing with our organization are going to continue to change. So we're going to have to pivot in terms of what we're looking for, as well as what we do internally. But there's a lot of really cool innovative AI tools that are coming out that are going to be able to help organizations. When you think about employee development and performance management, and identifying who are key players that could fill jobs based on their skill set or their core competencies, helping with succession planning in terms of which individuals are ready for that next step, or if not, what kind of individual training plans can we put in place to help them get there. There's also going to be new roles that don't exist today, and some that have already come out just because of the speed that AI is coming into our workplace. So I think it's a lot of exciting things, but I think, again, we just need to make sure we're supportive and we're identifying and proactively identifying those needs of our employees.
Thank you. Definitely moving fast, isn't it?
Yes.
Speaking of new roles, what new roles might emerge in the relocation industry with AI? Do you foresee any new roles like AI policy management, data ethicists, anything along those lines? And Dar, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think this is an area that I guess I've got freshmen in high school, and I'm trying to figure out how do I encourage them to move in certain directions with this new AI from a career perspective, with this new AI world. And one of the areas that I'm sitting here thinking about is the ability for AI to actually like emulate an entire system. We've seen that where they're designing aircraft or they're designing cold fusion using AI modeling. And I think that whole area, today for a student coming out of high school or coming out of college, they're going to get into that mode where it's like, oh, well, what do you mean you don't have a model that will emulate this? Why would I want to go test it myself? I can just emulate it on screen with an AI engine. So those types of roles, I think it's going to dynamically change how we think about audits and do, whether it's public auditing or auditing of safety auditing that, I just think the amount of jobs that are going to go away, there's going to be 2x the amount of jobs that are going to be created with this new technology.
Yeah, I think obviously in the IT space, that's going to be the biggest area that we're going to have a lot of roles come out. I think from a compliance standpoint, you'll see some roles emerging there to stay up to speed on the changing regulations, because as quickly as that's happening, I think we're going to start to see a lot of regulations come out to help manage and give further guidance on what you should and should not be doing, and that comes both at the federal level, but also with the states and local. So I think there's roles in that space, as well as project managers specifically for AI and those types of implementations. I think that's another space that you'll see a lot pop up.
You guys had such good answers. I was thinking like AI whisperer or like czar of galactic AI adoption or something like that. It was actually kind of hard for me to think of this one because, I see how our roles have changed so much with AI coming into the picture, and yet our title didn't change, And so like I saw more of it in terms of like our roles are going to evolve, but it's still going to be like marketing director and I don't know, global mobility strategist, stuff like that. So it's like in my mind, we were keeping a lot of the same titles, but like our jobs, if I were to tell, past Zach what future Zach was doing, he'd be like, what? So that's kind of how I thought of it. But I'm sure that we'll get an AI whisperer at some point. So.
And be honest, did either of you use AI to write your responses today?
No.
So how do we move beyond this shiny toy phase we're in right now of AI and make it something useful and strategic both now and kind of looking towards the future? Zach?
Yeah, so, all right. You're going to tell I love movies. So when I heard this question, and I have a bunch of little kids right now, but I immediately thought of Aladdin. So AI to me is like the genie, and kind of where we're at, I think it maps really well with Aladdin's 3 wishes. So when, who remembers Aladdin's first wish? Does anyone? The prince, yeah. It was like pizzazz, everything was going crazy. There were elephants, dancing people, swords, and Abu turned into, an elephant, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And, so he was like, what can this thing do, And I'm like, this was us with AI. I got it, and I was like, ooh, what can it do? And trying just everything, And I'm not even sure like half of it or more than half of it was useful, but it allowed me to sort of interact with it, and I was just kind of testing the waters. And, show of hands, does anyone know the second wish?
Save his life.
Yeah, I'm not even sure Aladdin knows what his second wish was because he was drowning. And that's sort of where I feel like a lot of people are at right now. It's like, we've experienced AI, and yet it's not like lulled. In fact, it keeps going and going and going, right? And so like every day we're just like, did you know AI can do this? Or it's got this new browser, you can give it your credit card and it can shop for you. I'm like, I don't want to do that, But every day it's just something else. And so it does feel like we're drowning. And we all kind of like, can I just have one more wish? Can AI just save me from AI? you know? And, but, you know, you get to the third wish. And the third wish was interesting, right? And I'll just go to you.
The genie free.
Yeah.
Let's give her a hand, everybody.
Exactly.
So, you know, the third wish, it was thoughtful, it was compassionate, it was human, you know? And I think that's where I hope we end up with AI, where we're not looking at it so much as, you know, like, how can this make me into something crazy cool, right? Or, you know, how can this just like save me? I don't want to feel like I'm constantly just like, you know, gasping for breath with AI, but like, how can I use it to better who we are and what we offer? And I think when we get there, when we reach sort of that mature phase, it's like, we don't need to be princes. We just need to have AI help us be better stewards of our ideas, of our relationships, and of our shared future. And so that's where I think we are and where I hope we're headed. And so that's how I think you overcome the shiny toy phase of AI.
That was very well articulated. I don't think we're going to top that.
No.
So,
You can't top a Disney analogy.
right? I understand there's some audience questions.
Yes, we have some excellent audience questions. So I think the first one will be for Dar. What are you doing to make sure the data that goes into those tools stays protected and private?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we are doing a fair amount of training with our employees. The other thing we do have some security on our platform itself, so you cannot like copy from one application into an AI, you know, basically engine or AI screen. But I think the last piece I would say is we're just being very, very mindful strategically about what applications we are allowing to be exposed. We're still going to leverage AI within our new ERP system. But it's certified and self-contained within that environment. And I think that's where, as leaders in the technology space, we just have to be really, really diligent about, number one, understanding the systems that we're working with, as well as auditing them.
Thank you. Dar, probably another one for you.
Okay.
Providers have been asked to supply sustainability data to RMC partners for years. Do you anticipate seeing companies report their AI usage against their sustainability efforts? I live in a Great Lakes state and worry about the huge environmental impact.
It maybe. I'm going to say with 16 months into the role and into the RMC space, I don't know the trends that we've been through in terms of the reporting of those capabilities, but I think it might be, I'm just thinking about just from an NEI perspective, how easy it would be for us to try to articulate how often and where in all of our work processes that we're actually leveraging AI. I think that would be pretty tough. I don't know how we would capture that. So if that requirement came out, JR and I would be spending a fair amount of time trying to figure out, all right, where can we measure this and how meaningful is that measurement going to be?
Right.
Thank you. We have a few more. As service providers start using AI to communicate directly with relocating employees or transferees, will the baseline standards or ethical guidelines your organization follows be expected to influence how your service providers adopt and manage that AI use? And if so, what rules, oversight, or governance structure will be needed to make sure it's done responsibly?
I guess I'll take a whack at it and ask for some input. But I think short answer is yes, we're going to have to move in that direction and probably move fairly quickly. As we're having more integration with our suppliers, many of you have expressed interest in, how can we get those characteristics faster and be able to respond to them quicker? We're in agreement. We want to try to expose them and make that transferee experience as seamless and frictionless as possible, but also to be predictive so that we can get ahead of, your shipment's not going to be there until next Tuesday. Great, well, maybe we should talk about changing your flights then accordingly, that type of thing. But I think that's where auditing is going to have to come back around, and us first understanding what data we're going to expose to you, but also then just that question. How do we audit it and make sure that it's not getting out into the AI world unintentionally?
Okay. How do we trust ChatGPT to spit out the correct answers? Should we fact check even more than when we're Googling? Yes.
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 Yeah. So I think the best way is to have some semblance of knowledge about what you're asking of it in the beginning. So this is why education is so important, and how, you know, AI is not something you use so that you can turn your brain off. And I think that there are different things that you can do, like they have deep search, so that mitigates a lot of hallucinations, and you can ask for things like direct source or primary sources, and do some of your your checking behind that. I know that we do sort of like when we're thinking about articles to write and help people, we do sort of use AI sometimes to get us started with like an outline and pull sources. We have AI pull our sources so that we can check them. But then, you know, we have a great writer team who then turn that into an article, and they're doing the checks, you know. And so, you know, some people may choose to just let ChatGPT write more of it than like we do. But like we really we have high standards for what we're giving to our clients in terms of information, and we want to make sure if we're saying something that it is validated. And so I think that's sort of in broad strokes what I think about that.
I'm going to give you an impossible task. What percentage, and I'm asking in one number only, what percentage of your time are you dedicating toward learning new AI tools?
I'd say 20. I still have to work.
Yeah, it's probably in that 20%.
Mine would be lower, probably in the 10 to 15.
Okay, and our last question. When will Skynet become self-aware?
Maybe it already has.
Yeah, if you haven't gone and looked at the Tesla bot videos that are out like on YouTube and whatnot, I think that's pretty interesting. And that's all going to be tied into Skylink as well. So,
Yeah. As long as we figure out time travel, we'll be fine.
yeah.
If I may ask one last question then, because this is something that keeps me up at night thinking about AI as fast as it's advancing. But do you foresee AI ever becoming so advanced that it could conceivably convince most people that pineapple belongs on pizza?
If you give me time, I think I can convince you of that.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the discussion.